Did you hear it? Karen said that to me this week. Good morning. I'm so glad to be with you again this morning. I have been Esther, Queen of Persia now for 5 years, and it has been wonderful. But did you ever have a time in your life when you said, it's not fair? When you are doing all the right things and nothing seems to go your way. I've had a few of those moments lately. I am no longer a naive teenager, but a young ruler of Persia. I've been in the palace long enough to let everyone know that I am the queen, and everyone knows. Long enough to understand life in the palace of the king. Long enough to understand intrigue and palace life. Long enough to know when to hold my tongue and when to speak up. The biggest secret I've had that I have not shared is that I am a Jew. You have to understand, my people are not well respected in Persia. There were wars, and we have been subjugated for quite some time. When I first came to the palace as a young woman, Mordecai told me, don't let anyone know you're a Jew. And I have listened. No one knows here. I've continued to listen to Mordecai as he has instructed me, and he has never failed to know me well. Many in the palace would seek to have me removed, certainly as queen, if they knew I was a Jew. Some would even like to see me killed because our people are that disrespected. But I have relied on the advice from my uncle, and I continue to seek his counsel as often as I am able. A queen knows when to listen to those who have her best interest at heart. I have servants that are loyal, and they carry messages between Mordecai and I. He sits at the palace gate. This was the place where all of the city gathered, the place of importance. The king would go there to deliver messages. The king would go there to hold council. It was the place where business was done and all the important people were there. And Mordecai had elevated himself to a place of prestige and honor. But he also had his ear to the ground. Mordecai heard of a plot to kill King Xerxes, and he sent word to me. You need to know this is something that will solidify your place with the king, he said. And he sent this word, and I told the king. I intimated that Mordecai knew that these loyal servants would want the king to know. And so the king called these people before him, and it was proven to be true. And he executed them. He hung them in the square for all to see, so they would know this is what happens when you cross the king. It was a brutal thing. You have to understand that. And there was part of me that felt just a little guilty for causing their death. But as they hung in agony, I realized that it was important that the king knew that it was Mordecai that had foiled the plot. And I made sure that the king had it written in his log so no one would doubt, no one would forget Mordecai's loyalty to the king. It cemented our relationship even further as the king respected my opinions, and it caused the king to look favorably upon Mordecai. But it annoyed the king's chamberlain. The one who was closest, one of his closest advisors, Haman, was not a man whom many liked. In fact, Haman was one of those people that thought very highly of himself. He was a proud and pompous man, but you could only say that if Haman wasn't anywhere near you. He had the king's ear. Well, Haman decided in his pomposity that he thought he was as well off and to be praised as much as the king. And so he had the king prepare a royal decree that whenever Haman walked through the streets, or more often rode through the streets, that all should bow to Haman. And most did, but not Mordecai. Not my uncle. This is where the plot thickens. I'm not sure why Mordecai did it. It could be that he refused to bow down to anyone who wasn't Yahweh. But I really don't think that was it, because he had bowed to the king before. It could be that he refused to bow down to Haman because he wasn't the king. But I think it had more to do with the fact that Haman was an Agagite. He was descended from King Agag, an Amalekite, the people that the Jewish people were told to fight generation after generation. Our priests vowed that the Lord wanted us to be at war with the Amalekites until time immemorial. Or it could just be that he didn't like Haman. Whatever it was, he refused to bow down to Haman. And Haman was enraged. He was furious. How dare this Jew not bow down to him? Excuse me. I heard he was so angry that he tore his quarters apart, screaming in a fit. But then he schemed as he did. And in his scheming, he decided that it wouldn't do just to have Mordecai punished. It wouldn't do just to have Mordecai hung like those others. But the only thing that would do was for the king to issue a decree that all Jews be killed. All of them. My people. The ones that I had held on to the secret of. And Haman continued this campaign of treachery so long that when the decree went out, people were absolutely terrified. Mordecai had done so much for Xerxes, and yet he was to be killed along with everyone else. It's not fair. Did you ever have a time in your life when it seemed that it wasn't fair at all? Did you ever have a time? I think we all do. When we think we're doing all the right things and still things go wrong. Oh, Lord, have mercy, this is stuck. All right, guys. I'm going to talk really loud, just for a minute. It seems to be the choice for Esther and Mordecai, that things were going wrong, and even though they had done the right things, exposing this plot, they were being punished. And it seems that sometimes bad things happen to good people. And in the case of Haman, sometimes good things happen to bad people. And it doesn't seem to be fair. Where is God when things don't seem to be going well? Why wouldn't he make sure that those who were loyal to him were rewarded. But we see time and again that this doesn't turn out to be the case. We see time and again that those people that we think should be rewarded get punished. Things happen. Disease happens. Unease happens. Poverty happens. But God has a plan. And I know that doesn't give us a whole lot of comfort, because we don't have even the tiniest glimpse of what that plan could be. It is interwoven into our lives and into the lives around us. I want to share with you a story. This is a book on Esther that I picked up as I prepared for this series. When Mikhail Riley's aunt was shot and killed by a mentally unstable gunman, everyone connected to the family must have wondered what God might be doing in this terrible tragedy. With the life insurance money, his grandmother built him a basketball court, and there Riley learned to shoot hoops. About 4 years later, Alabama were playing Mississippi State in an SEC basketball game in Atlanta, Georgia. State was in the lead, but Alabama had the ball and the chance to tie the game. Now, I know nothing about American sports, says the woman who wrote this, and, well, football this much, which makes this illustration a risky business, but even I can appreciate the excitement and tension of this moment. You could picture the scene. Everyone's on the edge of their seat. Riley takes the shot. The ball sails through the air, it hits the rim, it bounces around. Thousands of hearts are now pounding in thousands of throats. The ball hits the backboard and goes in right at the buzzer to tie the game, sending it into overtime. 8 minutes later, a tornado came roaring past the Georgia Dome. 14,825 people who would otherwise have been walking outside in the path of the tornado were instead safely inside the dome. It was literally a life-saving shot. What was God doing that day when Mikhail Riley's aunt was shot and killed? We can't possibly know all the ways he worked in and through it in his wisdom. But one thing we could say for sure is what he was doing was shaping and molding a young man and changing and saving thousands of lives. There's a tangled weave to life. And it seems that some days it's just not fair. We have lives that are joined and intertwined, jumbles of people and places and circumstances that we can't conceive of. We want to know the whole picture. We want it to make sense. We want to have everything go our way. But all too often, it doesn't. It just doesn't. But this plan that God has, as jumbled as it is absolutely clear to God. Do we trust God enough to follow where He leads, even when we think we've been wronged? Do we put ourselves in God's hands enough to stick